Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dirty Habits. I'm Brother Chris, and this is Brother Justin, and we're continuing our discussion that we've been having about the Lord of the Rings and Catholicism and Tolkien and his vision. Also, just want to ask everyone real briefly today. I got news with my family that my father-in-law may either have leukemia or blood cancer. They're not absolutely sure. They should know by Monday. But he was in the exam for several hours today, and so keep my father-in-law, Mike McLaren, in your prayers, if you will. And even if you see this later from now, I'm sure it'll be an ongoing issue. So I just ask you all to do that, and I really appreciate it. So we're delving into Tolkien still, and today we're going to really look at some of our understandings of comparison to the movies and our overall thought of the movies. So I'm going to start by turning it over to Brother Justin, who maybe will introduce our alcohols tonight, or almost alcohols.
Almost alcohols.
And, and then let him start, and we'll talk about that. So what are we drinking tonight?
All right, so for you, I've picked out this Mission Brewery double IPA. Because if you're going to do an IPA, you might as well make it a double. And Mission Brewery I really like, but also I thought it was fitting because its name is Mission. And we're churchmen, so... And me, since I'm partaking in the or participating in Exodus 90 this season, I'm drinking an almost alcoholic beverage by Athletic Brewing. It is called the Upside Dawn Golden Ale, and it's delicious. It tastes very convincing. Although then the aftertaste is a little bit too clean, you know?
Yeah.
You can tell it's not alcoholic.
Right.
Because the aftertaste, it tastes too good to be beer. But anyway.
And Quinn, what are you drinking out over there?
Oh, the Hop Opera by, what's it called? What's this called?
I don't know.
McKellar's.
McKellar's,
yeah. Yes.
Is it good, Quinn?
I like it. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, okay.
Even though I don't know what I'm drinking.
One of my bosses hates hops. It's like, you're living in the wrong county, man. We're like IPA central, you know?
Quinn sounds like a sorority girl. I don't know what I'm drinking. Sorry. Anyway, let's get into the thing. So should we start with just our overall impression of the trilogy?
Yeah.
And are we just doing Lord of the Rings? Are we including The Hobbit or not in this?
We gotta just stick it to Lord of the Rings because
Yeah,
The Hobbit could be a whole other. Now, if we were talking about what year did the animated one come out?
yeah,
that one's awesome.
Yeah,
that one's awesome. Not that big of a fan of the new movies overall, but for Lord of the Rings in general, the Lord of the Rings movies, since we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Fellowship of the Ring, for me, every year that it came out, it would have been my junior year of high school, senior year of high school, freshman year of college, and every season leading up, I think it came out in December of each one of those years. It was the biggest deal. Me and my friends, we coordinated who we were going to give the money to go to the box office and pick up the tickets. For a while, we held on to the tickets afterwards, and it was these are our keepsakes for when we saw Lord of the Rings. They were a total spectacle that lived up to the hype for me back in the day. I loved them. All of my teachers in high school loved them too, and so they would piggyback onto our crew that was going. They would go with us to go see Lord of the Rings. It was awesome. I think I saw Fellowship of the Rings 5 times in the theater, 2 Towers not as many times, but then Return of the King, I think I saw that 8 times in the theater.
Yeah, I loved them too, and I think I said this one of the last times, but I was really surprised pleasantly because I really didn't think they'd be able to do them well. And to see it then, I remember seeing the first one, and then when it ended, you're like, what?
Man,
Like, I want to keep
next
watching
one.
the movie.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what is
yeah.
it? So, yeah, I thought they
Yeah.
did an amazing job, spectacular job overall, and I love the movies. My father-in-law, who I mentioned, to this day, he still watches all three of them. Probably, I'd say, every 4 to 5 months. He will put them in and watch a marathon for himself.
Oh, yeah.
So,
There's so many scenes that are done really well where, like, sometimes when you just need that extra hit of motivation, like you're at the office and you're just feeling lazy or something, you throw on one of those scenes on YouTube and it just gets you amped up and you're like ready to go to war and stuff. So
I love the resurrected Gandalf. I've returned to you now at the turn of the tide. Sorry.
Epic. Overall, you know, definitely there's you have to take into account that there's this vast tome, you know, these
Right.
books that they had to
Condense.
they had to adapt. Yeah, they had to
Yeah.
adapt them, and you know, we'll go over later like what our favorite and least favorite adaptations from the books are. But taking all that into consideration, I'd say overall, yeah, I loved and still love the movies. I think if I was to rate which ones were done the best, like from worst to best, I think the one that was done the worst, and that's not to say I didn't like it, but the one that was done the worst was The Two Towers.
Because it strayed too much, you think? More than the
I
others?
think it strayed way, like, unnecessarily so. And I think we'll go over this in more detail in a little bit, but I think that some of the characters, they straight up damaged in that movie. Like, a lot of them. And one character in particular where it's like his big, like, come to Jesus moment happens and you're like, yes, it's going to be awesome. And then he ends up being a jerk for, like, the rest of the movie. Didn't make sense to me. So I put Two Towers at the bottom, and then Return of the King, I'll put at number 2. And I think Fellowship of the Ring was done so darn well. Not just the theatrical version, but if you watch like the extended version of that one, it is fantastic. It's fantastic. So overall, I love them, even though I'd say that Two Towers strayed a lot and made weird decisions, and there are weird decisions in all 3 movies.
Although the battle is still cool for Helm's Deep.
Oh, man.
Although some was a little weird, like...
Gimli's lungs, man. When he blows the horn.
But also like the weird Uruk-hai that just run to be human torches to blow stuff up.
Yeah.
Well,
I dig that. The kamikaze Uruk-hai.
Yeah.
I believe that they called those berserkers because I played the video games too, and that's what they were called. But yeah, so overall, awesome. Is that the same order?
Actually, I think I'd put them in the same order too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved the first one, and then like you, I liked all of them. I even liked the Two Towers, and like I said, the battle part was really cool. But yeah, some character development, just some things, and we'll talk about this later. Some things I realized why they left out. Like in a movie, it probably would have been anticlimactic to have Saruman return and the whole scouring of the Shire thing. Because in the books, it makes sense. The way the movies go, you can't kind of end on you have your high note and then you come back down and still end it. So I understand some of the choices, but yeah.
Yeah, I believe Elijah Wood, who plays Frodo in the main character, one of the main characters in the movies, he said that at the Academy Awards ceremony, where Return of the King won Best Picture, at one of the after parties, he ran into Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson goes, "So what happened? Like in the movie, did you like die? Like what happened?" and I almost called him Frodo. So then Elijah Wood says to Jack Nicholson, well, yeah, I mean, like me sailing off into the horizon is kind of like an analogy or an allegory, I guess, for death. And it's me accepting that I'm going to die and I go to the Undying Lands to go die. And then Jack Nicholson goes, I see, I didn't make it that far. He goes, what? You didn't make it that far? He goes, no, once you guys like beat the bad guy and the building blew up, I went out to the car and like heated up the car and stuff. So if Jack Nicholson couldn't sit through even what was there, I'm sure most audiences couldn't sit through another epic battle drama thing in the Shire, because in the books it's like,
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, the battle ends halfway through the book, and then there's another half of the book that you got to read. So anyway, yeah, overall that's my feelings about the movies. I think they hold up decent.
Mm-hmm.
Audiences are kind of a little bit more picky.
Yeah,
I think.
I do think they hit a lot of the good highlight. I think he really, especially the first movie, but I do think overall, Peter Jackson really did hit a lot of Tolkien's things. It did kind of have a lot of his feel. He didn't shy away from, the sort of Christian overtures. He didn't make it super obvious either, like Tolkien himself doesn't. But I felt he was, like in the extended version, I think it's great where he first sort of reveals a little bit that he's more than just a normal wizard. He's like, there are some things I have not been tested against.
Yeah.
And talking about the powers in this world. And
so cool.
So, yeah, I enjoyed it. And I guess for people who maybe won't read the book or maybe who would now be inspired to read the book, I think it's a great thing to show. And like you said, a lot of the scenes you can just pull out and really just see over and over again. Yeah,
and I mentioned in one of our earlier podcasts too that for me as a little kid reading the books, a lot of it was, well, not a little kid, but as a young teenager trying to read the books, there was a lot that in my imagination things looked really different. Mm-hmm. And I think that the movies really helped kind of provide a sort of aesthetic for how to approach the novels even. Like, I didn't imagine the Black Riders looking the way that they did in the movies when I read the books the first time.
Yeah.
Or the Balrog. They really imagined that demon really well. So then you get to the Silmarillion and you're like, wow, there was whole armies made up out of these things. Crazy. So overall, I give those movies an A- altogether. I'll give the Fellowship of the Ring an A+. I'll give the Return of the King like a solid A, maybe an A-, and then I'll give like a B to Two Towers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me to remember too, like all the differences between the theatrical versions and the extended versions. Because if I'm honest, the ones that I always watch at home are the extended ones.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're nerds.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to sit down with 4 hours worth of popcorn and get through just one movie. But like 4 hours with Lord of the Rings is better than 4 hours with Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. That show fell off the wagon.
Hey, Quinn, let's ask Quinn a question.
Oh.
You saw the Lord of the Rings movies, right?
I did, but I only seen it once, one time.
Only once?
Each
one?
Once. Each one, one time, close to when they came out. So they released in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Did you know anything going in about Tolkien's Catholicism or anything like that? Or did you just know they were cool fantasy books they'd made into movies?
I did hear about him, and I knew that he was a Catholic author, but I had no clue. So I did go in looking for it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, because I wasn't like very well read.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I was like in my 20s and or 19.
I don't know.
And I think I just
19. I'm just kidding.
Carry the one. And so I could not for the life of me. I'm like, I understood parts of it, but I just could not connect what he was trying to say. And it wasn't until like later that when I did talk to you, Chris, and you were bringing up all the symbolism that I'm like, like the whole creation thing. But I don't think that's Lord of the Rings you were referring to. But
that was a Silmarillion where he talks about creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did not connect it. C.S. Lewis was very obvious to me.
When Santa Claus rolls up in the sleigh.
Yeah. I think C.S. Lewis
character
he's a little bit on the nose.
Like the Lion of
Judah.
Judah.
Talked about the altar. Like,
right.
I remember reading that and just like being in tears because I was just like, I get it.
It's Jesus.
I know. So that was very real. It was, but yeah, with Tolkien and it was just, I'm like, who are these elves, and what is Middle Earth, and what does the Hobbit represent?
Oh, and
at some point, I'm like, who are the humans? What are, is it the king? That's like, yeah. So I was a little lost.
Oh, and then he gives like a gajillion names for everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like such and such mountain, which the dwarves call, and then the elves call, but then in Sindarin it's, but then in Elder. Yeah, it's.
But what about
it
the
can be
third one? It's
confusing.
called The Return of the King.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right. It's
Not
okay.
Christian enough for you. I guess Tolkien didn't like that name. The publisher made him choose that.
Oh, really? Is that
He said,
what
well, I'm giving away what happens in the title. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so we got to go over our comparisons, like a little bit more in depth. So I guess in our next clip, we'll go over kind of...
Before
what
we
our
end, let me
favorite
just
things
go over
were.
something real quick, because we brought this up a little bit with... it kind of came up with Quinn talking about Tolkien as a Catholic novelist. And I was reading this article, and I'm not even sure who wrote it. It's part of an anthology of people talking about Tolkien and his Catholicism, and they were comparing a lot of him to Flannery O'Connor, another Catholic author, who actually wrote a whole essay on what it means to be a Catholic author. But the man starts off by asking the question, what is a Catholic novelist? He says, well, a Catholic novelist is not an apologist. Tolkien wasn't an apologist in writing his letter, although it certainly can be used to apologetic value. And for those of you who don't know, I assume most people do, but apologetics, in the understanding of its actual term, apologia, means a defense of. It doesn't mean like saying you're sorry for something. It's a term in theology. So he wasn't doing that, and he also wasn't technically an evangelist. A Catholic novelist, as this man defined, but using Flannery O'Connor's kind of idea, is a writer who sees the world and writes about it from a Catholic perspective. So in her case, she wrote fiction, but not fantasy, whereas Tolkien writes fantasy, but he's doing it, and I think we talked about this a lot last podcast, he's doing it from a perspective of Catholicism. So a lot of the imagery, the way people act, issues of good and evil, morality, all those kind of things, free will, are all part of that whole understanding. So
it'd be interesting to read a comparison
yeah.
between those two authors.
Yeah.
Because at least from a subject matter standpoint, you can be more different.
Right. Yeah.
You're very different. And in tone, so different.
Yeah.
So different. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
So then let's wrap up this one, and next time we're going to look at those at the specific sort of things we liked, didn't like, etc. So until next time, we'll see you again. Just keep listening to us, checking out Dirty Habits, and we will see you next time. God bless everybody.